Welcome back to the Growth Unleashed podcast, where we have conversations with founders, owners, leaders in the tech space, predominantly focusing on AI and how it impacts growth strategies for organizations. Today, I'm excited to have Taiga Gammel. Taiga is the co-founder, I should say, and partner owner of Gilder, a organization that's focused on helping founders network, collaborate, grow, and so forth. So with that, I just want to say welcome, Taiga.
Glenn, I appreciate you having me on. Super excited to be a guest on your podcast.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I look forward to having you. So let's start real quick. So let's go back a little bit. 7, 8 years ago, you founded another tech company. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to university, majored in business and environmental studies, and minored in space analytics. So I was very passionate and focused on environmental sustainability and also just purpose-driven businesses too. I love mission-driven, purpose-driven businesses that ultimately solve some type of unmet need or problem. I saw a gap as my senior project. It was called Kudos. It was to incentivize and encourage people to be more sustainable by quantifying and tracking their actions. If they carpool more, if they purchase more sustainable products online, they get points and they can use those points to get discounts on other products and services. I was working for a company in Seattle where they did most of their business development in Seattle, and they did all of their product development, like engineering, in India. And I ended up leading the company the first quarter I joined in sales, and they sent me to India for a month. This is where you actually had to, talk to engineers. And I ended up networking with a lot of fantastic engineers in India, talked to them about this product, and started developing an MVP, had a little traction. I did multiple pitch competitions also at university. And so I saw that there's something there. Ended up getting a small amount of family and friends funding to develop the MVP. And then the pandemic happened. And that's ultimately where, it was a really difficult feat to acquire customers during that period, especially when you're building and creating an app that you need a big number of users in order for it to make sense. And so I put that in park and started working at an accelerator. And that's actually kind of where it led me to what I'm doing today at Gilder.
Great. Well, that sounds like a good segue then. I don't believe you went straight to Gilder, if I'm not mistaken, but sounds like there's definitely some synergies that help kind of segue in there. So let's hear more about that. What was the impetus for finding Gilder, and tell us a little bit more
Yeah,
about that?
absolutely. So I started working at a startup accelerator based in Austin, Texas. Did that for a couple of years. While I was at that accelerator, I first started on the sales side. It's the admissions component of the accelerator. So I talked to probably hundreds of startup founders every single month, qualify them for the accelerator program, and then see which accelerator program they'd fit into. Did really well at that, but wanted to understand the other side of the curtain of the accelerator. Wanted to understand what the product and the program was behind helping founders. And so I decided to switch over to the product and program team, became a senior program associate, and ended up working on the product side of the accelerator. And at an accelerator, typically the product is the mentorship component and the investor relations component, because ultimately founders either need to build and grow their product, or they need some type of financial funding component where they can, accelerate their product. And started working on the mentorship component of the accelerator, built out the mentorship component. I ended up getting to about 1,000 mentors at my time at the accelerator. I was introducing founders to investors, built out that component of the investor relations team. A lot of the founders would graduate the accelerator and they had one really big, unmet need. They needed some type of founder community where they can connect with like-minded founders and really pick each other's brains and network and talk and collaborate. At the accelerator, there was no networking component really outside of just big meetings, a lot of virtual meetings, a lot of in-person meetings, but founders wanted some type of community that they can actually connect, synergize. And so that's where we came up with Gilder. And actually, I've been building it and growing it with my old boss, Brian Lee. He was the director of product at the accelerator. And then one of the mentors who actually came on to the investor relations team to help, reshape it, Michael Frank, he's also the other managing partner. And so we actually all met at this accelerator, saw a lot of founders needed that community aspect. A lot of founders were obviously tight on money. Their run rate's low, but they need some type of connection that can ultimately lead them to, saving 5 to 6 figures. And we've been helping out a lot of founders lead those connections, helping them find advisors, helping them find investors, even services too. We do have a lot of B2B SaaS founders in our community. But yeah, so that's kind of the impetus. That's why we started.
So for folks who aren't familiar with just the concept of an accelerator, I think you painted a pretty good picture just in the context of what you were doing there and how it led to Gilder, but maybe just real high level. What is exactly an accelerator?
Yeah, a startup accelerator is a resource for founders to accelerate their business operations and connect them to tools and resources in a certain amount of time to get there. And so there's a couple of really famous accelerators out there. One is Y Combinator. That's an accelerator that I believe most people that are in the startup venture capital space know Y Combinator or YC. And that's just because a lot of early stage startups went through there. So like an example, if you're a startup founder and you have a good team, but you don't really know how to accelerate and speeding up the process of getting your business to market and actually getting them to a mass outreach of audience, you can go to an accelerator like Y Combinator. They would invest, I think the terms for Airbnb, they would invest $500,000, get 7% equity in the company, and bank on companies like Airbnb to become unicorns, which it has become because in that 7% equity, it turns into hundreds of millions of dollars. And so that's a lot of accelerator models. The one that we were at, it was on a model where it was a pay to play model with a warranty. It's actually a pretty big investment. It was between $6,000 to $18,000 for a 6-month program. At Gilder, we wanted to essentially provide the same tools and resources you'd find at an accelerator for a fraction of the cost with that community component to it. And so at Gilder, it's starting at $59 a month. You get access to a lot of the same tools and resources you'd find in an accelerator without giving up equity or the latter half. And a lot of accelerators like Techstars and YC, for example, has like a 7% acceptance rate just because they're really looking for those top tier startups. So that's kind of what an accelerator is. It's just a launch pad for businesses. It's to help small businesses get from point A to point B as fast as possible.
Great overview. 'Cause for folks who are watching who aren't really in the founder's world at this point, I think the way you described it is exceptionally well. So with Gilder, how is that going for you right now? You've been in about 2.5 years, is that right? It's
Yeah,
less
we
than 3 years
started.
old.
Yep, exactly. May of 2023, we recently just brought on a fractional chief marketing officer named Gary Blowers up in Dubai. He's from the UK, based in Dubai. He's really helping us with growth. And then, we've made a lot of really critical shifts the past quarter with them our goal is to get a lot of members, obviously. And since then, yeah, we've grown to about 240 members. But our goal is to hyper grow. We want to be able to grow in other regions. Like that's why we actually brought on Gary, because he can help us grow in the Middle East, like Emirates and like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, places like that, even maybe Saudi Arabia, if there's a startup landscape there. Not super familiar with that startup landscape, but I know that the UAE actually has a lot of great startups. And then also just expanding in other places like here in LATAM, there's a lot of early stage founders. A lot of them want resources in the States. A lot of them want to get connected to opportunities in the States. And so for folks in LATAM, it's helpful for them to network with a lot of US based founders. Most of our founders are based in the US, but we do have pockets of them in Western Europe, LATAM. We do have a couple members in Australia. We're trying to adapt to that time zone just because it's 16 hours different. So it's sometimes at 11 a.m., it's 2 or 3 in the morning. So we're trying to adapt and do more programming once we get more members to that time zone too. So yeah, it's been good. We have really amazing people in our community. The value that you get and the people that are in the community, I think there's no other community out there that beats it. There's Hampton at $7,000 a year. There's Founders Club. They do have a lot more in-person programming. Granted, that is also $7,000 a year. I think Hampton does an in-person dinner once a month, which I think those are super valuable. But at Gilder, we also do in-person dinners as well. So for starting at the price point that we start at, it's an incredible value for a lot of these founders that really want to hyper grow, but might not have that, revenue at the moment. Like, for example, at our community, they can get in the room with the former CEO at StubHub, Chris Sakalakis, or the current CEO at ClassPass and MindBody, Fritz Landman. We have a former director of product at the Cem Zuckerberg Initiative, Dinah Stepner. So a lot of really amazing people that you can get in the room with for, really low entry point for founders as far as financially.
So tell me a little more about the community founders. Obviously, you're getting a significant amount of value out of it, and that's really the target audience. Is there also, like, I guess, membership options, or I don't know the best way to articulate it, but do you have all the resources that a founder would need, such as like services resources? Are there accountants in there? Are there attorneys in there? Are there, you mentioned private equities and investors in there. Is this
Mhm.
almost like a one-stop shop to some degree where, if I'm a founder, I can go there to get whatever help I need in all realms of building the business?
Yeah, I'd say that's a very good way to describe Gilder. So we recently switched over to Circle to house all of our events, a lot of our communication, a lot of our social media components of Gilder are within Circle. In the past, we used to have an internal Squarespace site. We'd have Slack and we'd have all these different sites. Now we're bringing everything into Circle. And then we have something
Mhm.
else that's also internal called Nexus. And so what Nexus is, you can look at it as our online directory, but there's an AI component where you can actually enter a prompt on a person that you want to connect with. And then you can actually get a direct warm intro to that person through Nexus. And there's another tab that also shows investors. Right now, we have over 100 investors that we have gotten in contact with the past 3 months that they want deal flow and they want warm introductions. Now our founders can actually go in there and type in their thesis, their business. Like, I'm looking for investors with a thesis in CPG or a thesis in fintech or medtech or whatever it may be. And actually what Nexus does is it gives a match score. So a 10 out of 10 is a perfect match score. And then it lines up, John Smith, 10 out of 10, just because he has a background in investing in, you know, medtech, if you entered in medtech specific investors. And then you can also get warm introductions to investors as well. And then we also added a services component too within Nexus. And so if you're looking for a really awesome service that you can plug and play, like an AI tool that's, $100 a month, you can find that specific service, get in touch with the founder. We do give a Gilder discount because we ask all of our founders that are put into the services page, give it a Gilder discount for all of our members. And so we're also connecting a lot of B2B founders together. And so right now we're not monetizing that component either. So basically you have access to all these virtual components like Nexus, investor access, introductions to services, and that's all for $59 a month. For $150, you get personal brand opportunities. And so we actually invite our founders into Riverside. We have them record thought leaderships, and then we actually edit the videos back for them to promote on LinkedIn or Instagram Reels. Then we have our top tier that is $350 a month, but they actually have access. As some of the members that I mentioned, we actually have a lot of mentors that will mentor these founders for 2 hours per month, which eventually turn into advisory board positions for these mentors. A lot of the founders are finding advisors for that tier. The reason why it's priced so high is because oftentimes, these top tier mentors, they sometimes charge, $600 per hour. And we're providing those types of resources for them
Yeah.
at a
Yeah.
fraction of Boston, which are, we've connected with a lot
Yeah.
of
I mean,
founders.
honestly, yeah, 350 a month doesn't sound that bad compared to what you're getting from a mentorship from seasoned veterans like Dom. I think you said. So that sounds great. Well, good. That's tremendous value across the board for the membership. So tell me a little bit about how is AI having any impact on your business right now? I remember you mentioned an AI part of the search tool, but overall, is AI pivoting or changing any direction of the company? Or
Yeah, I'd say we've used it as a tool for leverage. And what I mean by that is, for example, We also have our podcast, the Start to Scale podcast by Gilder. And we record content like this. And what I do is I take the transcript from Riverside and I just put it into ChatGPT or another AI tool, and I ask it to create a SEO optimal blog. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking original content from a podcast and I'm turning that into more original content with AI helping me out. So instead of taking multiple hours to make a blog out of a podcast episode, it'll take me, half an hour to put everything together, from taking the transcript, editing it, and putting in the photos and making it look nice and reading through it to make sure that there's no hiccups. Additionally, we are using AI for outreach. We use, email automation, and that's utilizing AI. We're using also LinkedIn automation. We're using Dripify that sends out automated messages on LinkedIn. So as far as mundane task work that you could hire, 5 or 6 years ago, you'd typically hire someone to reach out to someone on LinkedIn and send out hundreds of messages every single week or every single day or whatever it may be. Now you have AI that can do it for $100 a month which of course, like hiring a full-time employee is fantastic because that helps drive economic value. But then, you could ultimately use AI to save up all those components and hyper boost other products and other components in your business and then hire for those types of things. It is pretty impressive where, we're using these AI systems that can put 50 meetings on our calendars a month, where a BDR would have to do that in the past.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people, there's always the talk of like AI replacing salespeople, replacing humans. But at the end of the day, the human component still needs to be there. AI is just augmenting how they do their job or changing the scope maybe of where they're focusing their time.
I started my sales career back in 2018, and we used to have to pump and dial 50, 60 dials every single day. We'd have to manually go to a spreadsheet to type up an email and do all of that. And now, 6, 7 years later, the volume I think a lot of these salespeople can go after is a lot more than 5, 6 years ago. So instead of having, let's say 10 meetings a week, now salespeople could accommodate having 20 meetings a week just because it saves up so much time for generating new leads and things like that. So that's just one aspect I wanted to.
No, I agree with you 100%. That a lot of the mundane tasks of like nurturing and responding and even just prospecting and weaning through so many different cold leads just to find the warm and hot leads. That's where I think salespeople are probably loving the fact that they can spend more time on more strategic and warmer opportunities than on a lot of the stuff that really just wasn't going anywhere. Tell me real quick, how are you all finding your customers? What are you doing out there to market Gilder, to do outreach? I know you mentioned email, LinkedIn a little bit, but how are you looking to grow the business? I guess really just figuring it out.
Right now we have 3 main levers that we're pulling for Q1 of 2026. The first is making our referral process a lot more efficient. I think that's one thing that's helped us a lot. We've been getting a lot of great leads from referrals, and they turn into really long-term members that really low churn and really hypering that component up. Brian's focused on that part of the business. The next is going after VCs. A lot of VCs have 50, 60 companies in their portfolio. We give them a package deal for Gilder where it's almost like a VC in a box of resources that they have at their fingertips. And so we're looking to target VCs. We actually just brought on our first VC from Chicago. Next year, we're really looking to hyper grow. So instead of, targeting our sales effort to have just one new member come on, like we could, talk to one VC that can bring in, 20 or 10 to 50 new founders within our community. The last one is really focusing on better content and more like strategizing the content when we outreach. Like we're looking to give founders more, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of more just tangible resources, like, how I closed 50 deals in 50 days. If you want to access this resource, we'll give you that resource. And then if they want more, then they have to sign up for membership. So we're looking at more ways to make more unique content, to fish hook more founders in, providing more value to founders up front, having them understand Gilder, and then, becoming members. And so that's what we're also really focusing on. And the key thing that we made different is we used to actually, all three of the managing partners, we used to interview every single member before coming in. Now we have a more fleshed out process that actually automates a lot of that. So we pre-qualify a lot of our deal flow, and then we actually just onboard. And so we really took out that kind of that sales component, if that makes sense. And so we can onboard, and we do have an onboarding call, and we talk to every single one of our members that onboards, but we really automated that first funnel. And then the other thing that we're doing is actually looking to get with a lot of podcasts and give them our, referral links and partner with influencers that, could promote Gilder. So we're looking to do that, partner with a lot of podcast influencers that have really, 50, 60 to 100,000 listeners that want to talk about Gilder within their video or their YouTube or whatever it may be. And then we partner with them, and whatever we negotiate the terms with them, it'll work out. But what I've seen in the past is that's helped a lot of businesses that you can just sign up and pay to play, so to speak. So in the past, we couldn't do that. We literally interviewed every single member that came in before they came into the community. So now we can actually partner with podcasters and influencers to do that. And then we also might do paid ads. We've never done paid ads either. So there's a lot of things that 2026, it's our hyper growth year. And we've really been growing in the past just from email marketing, which the first year that was fantastic. This past year, it's been really a pain. It's been difficult. I think the algorithms are changing. And then referrals. So like referrals have been really a big component. Word of mouth has been a really big component. And yeah, so that's kind of how we've been growing, just putting out organic blogs, Instagram videos. But now 2026 is getting a lot more strategic.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have, a lot on your plate. You listed like 5 or 6 different strategies to help grow the business. So I think hyper growth probably is a pretty good term, considering how much time you're going to be investing in those different areas and hopefully grow the business. So that's been really great. That's exciting to hear. One last question for you, just kind of more of a words of wisdom that you can impart upon the audience. But basically, what's one word of advice that you could tell a founder of any business who's starting a business? What's one word of advice you'd want to give to them?
Yeah, for early stage founders, I think, and I've emphasized this even earlier in this conversation, just like find that unmet need. Don't start a business just to be flashy. It's actually doing a lot of non-sexy, fun things consistently every single day to grow your business. And it's working 60, 70 hours. So really don't start a business unless you have an unmet need or unmet challenge that you face consistently, either every single day that you've seen, or that you're at work and you're like, oh, wow, like I can maybe make this process, 5 to 10% more efficient with a solution. And then once you find that solution, go after it. If you have a good, stable job and good income, I'd stay with that as long as possible, just because at Gilder and other businesses too, we've seen consistently a lot of founders are, even today, it's 70 hours for low pay for multiple years.
Well, cool. Well, Taiga, really appreciate it. Love learning more about Gilder and, your journey and a lot of the insights and advice you gave. If any of the listeners do want to learn more about Gilder or get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, anyone can reach out to taiga@gilder.com. Email me, let me know if you're interested. And also on our website, there's a lot of really cool resources if you look, and then we can have a conversation as well. But I'd go to also gilder.com. And yeah, anyone that is interested, and if they find this from, your podcast, Glenn, that'd be fantastic. And we can see. But yeah, just gilder.com or Taiga@Gilder.
And that's Guildre, right? Gildre. Okay, good. I'm glad we just confirmed that.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, great. All right, awesome, Taiga. Thanks so much. It was great having you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time, Glenn. I appreciate it.